Hey guys, I'm Jacob, and today I want to talk to you about MAGNACUT. Specifically, I want to talk to you with Eric from Outer Limitless about MAGNACUT as compared to another one of my favorite steels, CPM 3V. Now, Eric and I are both blessed enough to have the same fantastic knife model, the Reef Knives F6, in both 3V and MAGNACUT, and we saw this as an opportunity to give you guys a unique perspective and discussion on MAGNACUT and whether it's necessary and whether it lives up to the hype and whether you need it. So firstly, I want to thank Eric for coming out, for hanging out, and for doing this video for me. Link to his channel will be in the description box below. Please go and subscribe to him if you like this type of content. Also, if you like this channel and want to see more stuff like this, consider subscribing in the description box below. You will see how you can support this channel through things like my own knife brand, Exodus Knife and Tool, my rifle sling brand, Beach and Tactical, where I hand make every one of the slings out of American-made components. I designed these slings in Afghanistan. So I'm doing a couple of things myself to help support this channel, and you can help me in that endeavor. Without anything extra, let's get right to this content and start talking about our knife steel nerdiness.
Jacob.
What's up, Eric?
What's happening, guys? Thanks for having me here.
My pleasure. It's always a pleasure.
It's hot.
It's hot and humid.
Oh, man. So, yep, I am here with Jacob, enjoying your home.
Yep.
This insane and almost impossible to describe deep jungle, caves, water, humidity, spiders, millipedes.
More humidity.
More humidity.
Salamanders.
Yep, salamanders. Just really, really cool place, man. So thank you for having me here.
Absolutely.
It's great.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming.
Yeah. So we have a little bit of a topic. I don't know if it's as much a topic as maybe we're stirring the controversy just a little bit.
Yeah.
But let's set the tone here. So we both have actually two Reef knives. So this is the F6. You have two F6s.
Yep.
All right. One of them is their first release, which was, for me, I ended up with a G10, black G10 handle variant, and CPM 3V steel. So I'm assuming that your first version is in
3V.
CPM 3V, right?
With the Kydex, yeah.
With the Kydex. So, okay, you had the MAGNACUT handle.
Yep.
Very cool. Awesome performer. Stellar in terms of its capability. I think everybody would also say that 3V is a great performing steel, very versatile, works in a number of different environments, good durability, edge retention, all the great characteristics that you're looking for.
Definitely, with a lot of extra toughness for bush-specific balance, woods and
Yep.
the type of stuff we do. Yeah.
Yep. So my question is, and as we lead into this, so new for 2024 and sort of announced and debuted at Blade Show 2024. They came out with their new F6, which is now in MAGNACUT. MAGNACUT. Why? The question for me is, why? Now, it's not a knock on any manufacturer for wanting to introduce new steels. And even new steels on the same model that they've already had out. But my question is why, and especially when you had an awesome performing knife like 3V, what are we gaining with MAGNACUT? Why are we going there? Is it just to sort of feed the frenzy of the next new super steel?
Well, you know, there's, I think, a few reasons for this. Part of it, let's not discount. People might look down on anybody using MAGNACUT to get sales because they might be like, oh, that's not, whatever. If there's a feeding frenzy and you're a business and you don't want to go out of business and you can get in on it, get in on it. I bet you some of these F6s sold because they're in MAGNACUT, and that's valuable. But when it comes to the differences between MAGNACUT and 3V, I think that there are justifiable reasons to get a MAGNACUT over a 3V, but they might not be as you know, as important as you might think.
So, for example, let's just say the original version was in 1095. Right? And now you decide you're going to come out with MAGNACUT. You have a pretty big difference in those steels.
Yeah,
right?
that's self-explanatory.
So, I mean, going from full carbon now to something that has stainless properties and to getting into a powdered steel, right? So now you're talking powdered steel versus your, sort of standard steels. But to me, and I guess it gets into a little bit of the controversial realm, right? There have been either, and I'm going to say claims, justified or not, and I'm not going to go too far down the controversial road, but potential issues with MAGNACUT. I know there's been a lot of looking into that, a lot of research, people that have been trying to understand what's going on with MAGNACUT. So, I think there's a little bit to be said there. And ultimately for me, I question, and what I'm curious to find out and excited to find out is, do I see an appreciable difference in the performance with an already fantastic knife that we know has great balance, great edge, geometry, which aids in edge retention, but also excellent steel. Am I going to see a difference in performance going to the MAGNACUT?
Right.
And I'm excited to find out.
So, as we move forward with steels and everything like that, we've got people obviously saying you need X amount of edge retention, you need X amount of corrosion resistance, whatever the case may be. 3V has been around for a while. It's a known quantity, right? It's a absolutely amazingly balanced steel for edge retention, corrosion resistance, and again, we're harping on toughness. These are very tough knives that are meant to absolutely be used. And all of a sudden, MAGNACUT comes out and people are acting like 3V, the edge retention isn't good enough.
Right.
So the edge retention is just as good as it always was. It is fantastic. You do get great edge retention, and I think MAGNACUT rates a little higher on edge retention. I don't think that difference is big enough in the woods to justify going towards MAGNACUT. Where you might justify it might be corrosion resistance.
It would be interesting now, especially sitting here, and it makes me really start to think about corrosion resistance because, we've been out here for a few hours. Imagine being out here for a few days, right, when that starts to matter. I have never personally had any problems with 3V. I do live in an environment that has salt intrusion in the air. Again, I've still never had too much in the way of problems with 3V. Now, I don't torture test my knives, I don't leave them in the elements, and I don't go as far as to say I abuse, and even in testing, I don't typically go as far as to abuse. I try to do practical testing. In all of my practical testing, I've never really had corrosion issues with 3V to begin with. So I'm starting to wonder, I'm like, well, are you diving with your, reef F6 in your 3V in salt water, and you're worried about, to me it's like, when does it get to that point? And in my practical testing, I have yet to find it.
So I think 3V has plenty of corrosion resistance, and I even have a hard time getting a patina that I like on it. Now, the only time where I would start considering the corrosion resistance, let's get into fantasy land here. You're trapped on a tropical island for who knows how long. I might start considering my corrosion resistance, right? Mm-hmm. Or like Alan Kay on Alone. I'm on Alone in Vancouver.
Right.
Soaking wet, salt water, everything else. The reason that I think the corrosion resistance is worth mentioning on these knives, even though they are a bush knife, is because MAGNACUT is so close to stain proof. And that's pretty wild. For me, I think
I gotta try some Mitina.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I can't even really get Mitina usually on my
3V.
on 3V hardly.
Yep.
So some people have done it. I certainly haven't been able to get any Mitina on anything like S35, and S35 isn't even close to as corrosion resistant as MAGNACUT.
Yep.
So we've got a balance here. For me, what I have not found out yet, and what I'm personally going to be looking at, is how easy is one to sharpen over the other.
That's an awesome point. general field serviceability. Now I have found that my 3V is reasonably forgiving.
Yep.
The edge retention is good enough that I don't usually damage an edge. I'm pretty careful. I say all the time, I really try to avoid a sharpening technique that removes metal, unless I need to reprofile. But Reef does a great job with their edge geometry, so why would I reprofile this knife? I wouldn't. The only reason why I would get into removing metal is if I truly chunk an edge. But I'm usually pretty careful. I usually pay attention, and my technique is usually good enough that I'm not causing major damage to an edge. Therefore, I don't need to remove material.
Right.
And if I don't need to use diamond, then all I'm doing really for the most part is honing. So a leather strop will get this awesome right back to, hair popping sharp, but I like a little bit of tooth on my edges. So I will first, strop with a nice leather strop, and then go to a fine ceramic rod and do a couple of passes, actually to introduce just a little bit of a toothy edge back into my blades, and especially for woodscraft or bushcraft types of adventures. And so I have never had any problem with serviceability of my 3V, but mostly because I don't typically chunk my edge.
So for me, if someone said I had to pick 3V or MAGNACUT in the same knife, I don't think I'd care much. Or if someone said, I'm going to pick for you, okay, pick for me. And if they're the same price, MAGNACUT might be more expensive, and honestly, that might be what makes me make my decision if I'm picking one or the other. If I'm in that situation, I might just go with the cheaper one.
Yep.
They're both going to be great.
Yep.
If only one is in stock, I would buy without hesitation. MAGNACUT or 3V, without hesitation. This is an awesome knife to own, and I would not be picky over one or the other. Especially in really extended situations or lots of salt water, that corrosion resistance might be cool, but CPM 3V has always been good enough in my experience. Edge holding means less to me than sharpenability. How long can I maintain it just with a strop?
Yep.
I have another knife, a Phobos, in MAGNACUT, and I've kept a good edge on it with a strop.
Yep.
So I've been happy with that. But now if I have to reprofile, how difficult is that going to be? And I noticed the difference when using my Work Sharp precision angle adjust or whatever. Going from something really easy like 8670 to going to something like normal like a S35 VN, it's a big noticeable difference. Will it be noticeable on these knives?
Interesting.
I don't know yet, but I'm not on a train where I'm going to tell you MAGNACUT's the newest thing and you need it.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to tell you that MAGNACUT is a huge upgrade over 3V. For the sake of testing, I like having both of them because knife testing is my passion. But even if they were the same price, one way or the other, I wouldn't care much. And I think they're both fantastically balanced steels, especially for out here in the woods.
Nice. Now I'm making a little bit of an observation. Do me a favor.
Yep.
Pick up your two blades.
Okay.
So we're going to call, for the sake of this argument, the original 3V is Gen 1.
Okay.
And we're going to say that the MAGNACUT is Gen 2.
Okay.
Hold them side by side and feel in profile, because I have G10 on my Gen 1 and I have the micarta on the Gen 2. To me, the handle is more refined on my Gen 2. It's a little thinner. It's not quite as thick. It actually slopes down a little more in the scallops. So my question, and what I don't know, and if I can get the answer, we'll annotate below, but have they made some handle refinement in their next iteration? And if that's the case, I feel like the handle on my MAGNACUT melts into my hands a little better and would probably suit somebody with smaller hands a little bit better than the original. And I don't know if yours are that way.
So I'm embarrassed to say this, but I assumed, you know what that means, that they were exactly the same.
Yep.
So I've used them both separately, but I haven't actually put them right next to each other, which is crazy. Mine, just like you're saying, is thinner at the back on the MAGNACUT. And I'm not ready to say, I do think it feels better in hand like this, but I found sometimes a little extra heft at the back can reduce fatigue.
You're right.
With long use. So I'm not ready to say which one I think is better.
I agree.
But there is a difference there.
There is.
And I'm glad that you mentioned it because I might not have noticed it. For me, my MAGNACUT spine is sharper. So when I reviewed the F6 the first time in 3V Gen 1, I wasn't happy with how I was doing with ferro rods. I mentioned that in my video. Yep. I said I'm going to sharpen this up a bit. Yep. My MAGNACUT throws flames. So, you know, there are small differences. The choil is different.
Oh, big time. Oh,
yeah.
I see. I didn't even pick up on that. Yeah, you're right. Big time difference. Yep.
Yeah. So we do have some upgrades on the MAGNACUT or changes that could be worthwhile. Now, again, I hadn't even noticed this before, and if both knives were the same price, I would still feel completely confident grabbing either one. The one thing is, and this could just be on mine, and like I said in my review, I want my spine sharper.
Yep.
But that's about it on that. Very interesting. I know that the knife steel debate will rage on forever.
I hope it does. We're looking for comments, so if you have something to weigh in on, what would you choose and why? How do you feel about Reef's decision to now release the, you know, pretty much the same knife, although now that I'm seeing the refinements, I'm glad they made some subtle changes, but, you know, again, like you said, to be determined. But what do you all think? I mean, weigh in the description box below, put some comments.
Let me, I want to say one last thing is when I got into this, and I'm sure when you got into this, this didn't exist.
Oh,
nothing like this existed. And if you wanted a knife anywhere near this nice in every way, you had to go custom. But with MAGNACUT or 3V, as good as they are, 15 years ago, you could go to the best custom maker in the entire world, and you wouldn't get a knife like this.
That's very true.
That's right off the shelf. Guys, we are so spoiled right now. And, you know, for all of the people who are really, really concerned with price, balance out how often you're actually going to use a knife. But if you can buy this knife and use it all the time, it is so affordable for what you are getting. And like I said, nothing like this even existed before. I mean, it's amazing.
Oh, I remember when it was like, D2's an upgrade to 1095, and then it was like, you know, O1's an upgrade to D2, and then, you know, you go down the line, and it was all of a sudden like, everybody needs S30V, and, you know, you finally had like, you know, for me it was Benchmade with their Bushcrafter that was like, you know, an S30V. It was like the first super steel knife I was getting, and then you fast forward, now we needed S35VN, and you move forward, and now we need 3V, and here we are, now we all need MAGNACUT. I mean, it's going to continue to move forward. You can go back to your original steels and have a great, great knife. So, to your point, either one you get here, you're a superstar. I mean, you're going to be doing yourself a real good service getting a Reef knife. Fit and finish, fantastic. And more important, I want to even point out, awesome people.
Yeah.
Everybody forgets that this doesn't represent just a tool.
Right.
This represents the people.
The brand.
In the
people
brand.
Behind.
And awesome people.
And in hand, you know that the guys behind this had attention to detail and knew what they were looking for. And I actually I grabbed this F4 is actually a pre-production from before Reef was even really Reef. And this is G10, and they sent me this BPS knives sheath. This was from Amazon. They didn't have the sheaths done yet. So Stu bought one of my adventure crafts, and I made a relationship with him early on. He's like, dude, I want to start a knife brand. And I was like, yes. And I wanted to help him in any way that I could. And I've got my son, I was helping him talk about his prototyping on the handles.
Right.
So he sent me a whole bunch of 3D printed knife handles. I've got videos of my oldest boy as a little toddler out there before these knives even existed beating on a Reef, right?
Yeah.
So they are passionate about this. These are fantastic knives. And this is, they all represent a huge departure from what was available 10 or 15 years ago to what you can get now. And, you know, the ultimate grail knife that you couldn't even get 15 years ago is not as good as this that's sitting on the shelf. And so when I talk about value, when I mention the price, It's a big part of it, man. Not only are you supporting that smaller company and those really awesome people, but if you use a knife a lot, think of your cost per use.
Oh, absolutely.
On something like this. It's non-existent.
Negligible after a while. So, nice. Well, again, I'm curious what people think. Leave some comments. Jacob, as always, appreciate you, man.
Thanks for having me.
Reef Knives, thank you for all the support, and we hope you guys enjoyed that. Back to sweating in the jungle.
Yep.